So people have been asking me, JT, do you think the Cleveland Browns will make the playoffs this year? And I say yes and no. The reason why I say that, first let me say why I say no. Because of the ongoing pandemic that we have going on. So with the ongoing pandemic going on, we don't know when NFL teams are going to start training camps or when they're going to start off-season programs, anything like that. So we don't know the time frame of the off-season. And that is really important for the Cleveland Browns because they just hired once again another coach in Kevin Stefanski. And when you hire a new coach, that means you got a new playbook. You got to go through the plays and things like that. Make sure you know the plays and everything like that so you can know the plays on game day and run the plays to perfection or the best of your ability, right? Now, since we don't know how long of a training camp or preseason we're going to have, the Cleveland Browns aren't really going to have that much time to really learn and master the play. But now I know a lot of you guys in the conversation probably going to be like, oh, JT, they're probably at home studying the new playbook and things like that. Yeah, it's a difference between learning the playbooks on paper and then actually going on the field and executing the plays. It's a difference. Because just because you know the plays on paper doesn't mean you're necessarily going to have a lot of success. It's a thing called repetition. Like, you can know something, but if you don't practice it, you're never going to get better. So they could know the plays all they want to, but since they're not practicing them on the field and getting no experience running those plays at 100%, we don't really know how good they're going to be. So when NFL season starts, the Cleveland Browns might start off the gate a little bit slow because they're still going to be trying to learn the playbook and they're still going to be trying to master everything and learn the new offense and new system and things like that. And since we don't have training camp or anything like that, or we don't know how long training camp will be, the Cleveland Browns aren't going to have that long to prepare. And they don't have no OTAs or minicamp or anything like that. So the Cleveland Browns, with their new coach and their new staff that they have, they're going to be a little bit more behind the other teams who still have the same coaches and the same system and the same plays and things like that. Now, while I think the Browns will make the playoffs, if the pandemic thing isn't a problem, then heck yeah, I believe the Cleveland Browns make the playoffs. Listen, I believe if the Cleveland Browns are able to learn the plays and things like that, and this pandemic doesn't cause problems or anything like that, then I absolutely believe the Cleveland Browns will make the playoffs this year. Now, a lot of people may be laughing at that, but look, the Cleveland Browns have a lot of talent. And I mean, eventually, you would think that they will eventually have to be able to make the playoffs because, listen, you can't be bad forever. You can't be bad forever, man. I mean, last year, we thought the Browns wanted to make it to the playoffs, and they didn't live up to expectations. One, because the offensive line was a lot worse than we envisioned at the start of the season, and plus, Freddie Kitchens wasn't a good coach. He wasn't able to get Odell Beckham the ball. He wasn't able to handle the personalities. He handled a lot of things wrong. But you got Stefanski there, who I believe in as a head coach. He is a solid play caller. And the Cleveland Browns got a lot of talent. I mean, you got Austin Hooper. You pair him up with Devin Njoku, so now you can run 2 tight end sets. You got a very good backfield and Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. You also got probably the best 1-2 punch at the wide receiver position in the NFL and Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. Baker Mayfield should look to bounce back from his sophomore slump last year. You also improve the offensive line. You get Jedrick Willis with the 10th overall selection and this past year's NFL draft. And you also picked up Jack Conklin, who is one of the best offensive tackles in the game, and it's the best run blocking offensive tackle in the NFL. So the offensive line for the Cleveland Browns is dramatically improved, and the defense is really good as well. I think Greedy Williams is going to have a breakout year this year, apart with Denzel Ward, who both of those guys both missed a good amount of time last year. They both missed a few games last season. You also got Grant Delpit in the second round of the draft. You got Myles Garrett coming back from his suspension after he knocked Mason Rudolph in the head with his helmet. So I mean, the Cleveland Browns, they have talent. And I believe in Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski probably is the best coach that the Cleveland Browns have hired since ever, really. Over the last couple of years, he's better than majority of the coaches they brought in. You see, I believe in Kevin Stefanski a lot more than I believe in the last past coaches they brought in. What? Then they hired like Pat Shermer. They brought in Hugh Jackson, or who else did they bring? Freddie Kitchens and things like that. I believe in Kevin Stefanski a lot more than I do in the past few coaches they had in the past. So I mean, the question is not the talent, but the question is basically coaching. And like I said, I believe that Kevin Stefanski is a good enough coach that he's going to be able to find ways to get Odell Beckham involved in the passing game, and he's going to figure out a way to get the most out of the offense. He's going to find a way to get efficient quarterback play out of Baker Mayfield. So I mean, I think this Cleveland Browns team, they have the talent. They can't compete with the Browns. Well, they can't compete with the Ravens. We saw it last year. They beat the Ravens, actually pretty much beat the Ravens by the largest deficit that any team did last year other than Tennessee in the playoffs. So, I mean, when you look at the Cleveland Browns from a talent standpoint, yes, they can compete. You could argue and say that they could win the AFC North. It all depends on coaching. And it all depends on what happens with this whole pandemic that's going on. How long is Cleveland going to have to run through the plays and practice in real motion? Because like I said, for those of you guys who ever play football, doesn't matter what level. If you play college, pro, semi-pro, or high school, you know that just because you know the plays in your head, it's a difference between knowing the plays in your head and actually walking through and knowing the plays on the field, going through the plays in real motion. So, I mean, just because the Cleveland Browns players are at home learning the playbook and things like that, they never had any practice time with those plays on the field, learning what works and what doesn't work. So basically, the Cleveland Browns could start this season off, since the offseason could be shortened with a shortened training camp and a shortened preseason. They could be running trial and error with the first couple of weeks of the NFL season. So basically the first 3 weeks, the Cleveland Browns coaching staff could basically be figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And that's my biggest concern about the Cleveland Browns. Because listen, it's really important to start the season off fast or start the season off strong. Because you start the season out slow, and let's say the Cleveland Browns start the season off like 1-4, or even 1-3, you put yourself in a little bit of a hole, because then at most playoff teams have like at least 5 wins. So then you got to go on a little bit of a winning streak. So I think it's really important to start a season off fast, then instead of risking what the Cleveland Browns might end up falling into and starting the season out slow, because you're going to be too busy running trial and error, trying to figure out what works, still trying to master the plays on the field and things like that due to the whole pandemic and due to a shortened off season. So, I mean, if it wasn't for the whole bug that's going around and we still have full-length OTAs and mini camps and training camps and things like that, and none of those things were affected, then I would believe 90% wholeheartedly that the Browns will make it to the playoffs this year. But due to the fact that we have everything that's going on in the world right now affecting the NFL and things like that, and affecting the offseason programs and things like that, that concerns me a lot. That concerns me a lot. Now, if the Browns had the same coach and things like that, like some of the other teams, like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, they're not going to have this problem. Because they're not going to be learning anything new, basically. They still knows what works and things like that. But the Browns are. They're going to have to practice. They're going to have to rush to make sure they get everything down. The terminology and things like that. The hand signals on the field and things like that. So, I mean, it's a really complicated process. I mean, people just look at talent and they just be like, oh, the Browns got a great roster, they should make the playoffs. But it's a lot of extra external factors that goes into it. Talent doesn't win championships, and it doesn't automatically win you games like we saw with the Dallas Cowboys and the Browns last year. They were a great example of this. So it's a lot of external factors that people need to look into. Now, a lot of people have been saying, of course, the Browns going to make it to the playoffs and things like that. But you got to take a little bit of a deeper dive. Yes, they have a really good roster. But with the new coaching staff and everything that's going on, are they going to be able to learn the playbook, get the terminology down in time, that they can start the season out not behind the curve like everybody else? So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think the Cleveland Browns will make the playoffs this year? Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also make sure that you guys hit that link in my description down below. That will take you to my social media. You can go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and also make sure to scroll down and subscribe and leave a 5-star review on my podcast. So Thank you for watching, and check out some of these other videos, and I'll see y'all later. So people have been asking me, JT, do you think the Cleveland Browns will make the playoffs?